Yes, good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege to have all of you with us this afternoon on this Moran Publishers Assessment webinar. I believe we're going to have an amazing time of learning, of sharpening our tools, of understanding effective assessment more deeply, more thoroughly. And we have quite a tremendous cast of presenters for you today. We'll be covering the methods, the tools applied in each of the different learning areas. So I believe it's going to be a very, very useful time together. So thank you for taking this opportunity. Thank you for taking the chance out of, I know, a very, very busy schedule. You've probably come from class and feeling tired, but even at this moment, you're ready to share with us. So we appreciate you being on the call. We trust that more will continue to join, but for the sake of time and interest of integrity of our timekeeping, we want to go ahead and get started. So allow us to start with a word of prayer. I'll lead us in prayer, and then we'll continue with the presentations. Let us pray. Our Father, we come before you this afternoon, sincerely asking that you would speak through us and be among us as we share this session this afternoon. Lord, we are handling, teaching, nurturing the next generation, actually the generation of leaders that we have in front of us in our schools in Kenya. Father, we pray that even as we learn more about how to enable them, to equip them, and to nurture them, we ask that you would inspire this learning time. Be with each of the presenters. I pray that the technical issues of network would work well. All of the laptops and phones and computers will operate well, and we'll be able to share a meaningful time together this afternoon. Thank you again for your faithfulness in our lives. In the name of our Lord Jesus, we pray. Amen.
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 Amen. So again, thank you, everyone. I heard a lot of amens. That's beautiful. So we're going to go directly into the sessions. We have 7 presenters, and I just want to start with a brief introduction of what we have come together for, or what we want to see accomplished. If we were in the classroom, we would call them learning outcomes. But I think we just want to know why we are together and what we're intending to accomplish as we look at this topic, effective assessment and reporting of CBE performance in senior school. I was just thinking about this, the situation that we're in now as teachers. These learners have come up through CBC. What they know is CBC. What they know is competency-based education.
Hello.
Your mic is muted, madam.
I don't know. I think that it's being muted on the other end. I'm sorry.
It has been deactivated by the organizer.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I start one more time? I'm sorry. The third is the right one. Eh? I think they're trying to mute mics and somehow mine gets turned off as well. I'm sorry for that. Yes, here we go. We are together this afternoon to look at effective assessment and reporting of CBE performance in senior school. That's clearly what we're here to do, to look at the assessment aspect of our work. And if we talk about learning outcomes, obviously in the classroom, not particularly learning outcomes, but if we could look at the first slide that we have, just to understand what we intend to accomplish today, what we want to learn together. So if we could go to the next slide, please, to look at what we are accomplishing today, what we want to achieve. Yes, clearly to understand what is expected in competency-based assessment, known as CBA. what are we as teachers expected to do, and recognize the importance of having clear assessment criteria. It allows the learners to know what their goals are and move toward them. It makes the reporting or the assessment completely fair when we have the clear criteria, and be able to differentiate between formative and summative assessment. I'm sure this is familiar. Formative is ongoing. It's moving toward the goal of competency. And then the summative is what we may be more familiar with, the final assessment that displays or is evidence of competency. We want to be able to prepare us appropriate assessment tools and use them, and also understand the methods of assessment. So we have methods of assessment and tools of assessment, and of course, know how to prepare the assessment reports. So we believe, as your trainers, that we will have these achievements ticked on your list of accomplishments by the end of the afternoon. So I'm going to invite Emmanuel Wawire to take us for the first session. Welcome, Emmanuel. Yes, Emmanuel, we're ready for you. I think your slide is
Thank you, and good evening or good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
Kindly confirm if I'm clear so that we proceed.
You are.
Thank you. So once again, good afternoon, colleagues. So my name is Emmanuel. As the moderator said, I'm Emmanuel Wawire. I'm a teacher. I'm a consultant. I author books and many other things. I'm a father. Now I'll go straight to what has brought us this afternoon. We are looking at assessments. So basically, my role will be looking at assessment methods, but I may also touch on some of the assessment tools by just mentioning, because I know my colleagues will be able to go deeper into explaining how each of those assessment tools gonna be used by us teachers when we are in the classroom. So I'll start by looking at that first slide you're able to see. Okay, and maybe allow me, colleagues, to pose a question on the same. At what point in your lesson do you normally assess learners? At what point? Is it at the start of the lesson, at the middle, or at the end? That's a critical question that we need to understand. And of course, the answer may be obvious, but at times maybe you can just chat or type the answer in the chat, and then maybe we'll be able to look at that particular answer later. So when you look at my first slide, I've just said that assessment is continuous. So that first step, when you enter that classroom, the first thing you will speak to these learners, already you are carrying out an assessment. So colleagues, assessment is part of the teaching and never be separate from teaching. So that is the first slide I wanted to bring to your attention. And I believe we are here just to remind ourselves on the best methods of assessment. Of course, we've been using these methods, but just to refreshen ourselves about the best methods of assessment that we need to use or utilize in our classrooms. Okay, so I'll ask the host to move me to the next slide. I have only about 5 minutes, and then I'll be able to stop, or rather invite the next presenter. Okay. Now, when you look at that slide, we are looking at the Bloom's taxonomy in assessment. This is something that you need to think about before you carry out any assessment. That assessment must be tied to this Bloom's taxonomy. The reason why I'm saying so is because you can be tempted to only lie on one side of the Bloom's taxonomy without taking care of other parts of the or levels of the Bloom's taxonomy. And that's why I thought it's good to remind ourselves that Bloom's taxonomy is key, is a key tool when you are thinking about assessment methods. And because I'm a biology teacher, you will realize that I've given some examples there that a question like if you are looking at tools that are used to examine specimens or collect specimens. Okay, so the first level of Bloom's taxonomy that us will always go for is to ask learners to name the tool that is used to capture maybe an insect. And you see, they'll name it very fast. But as an educator, I'm reminding us that we should go deeper and even utilize those other levels that are above just remembering, just memory. Utilize them so that these learners are well prepared, and at the end of the day, they acknowledge the knowledge they have received. And that's why maybe most of us, we may be biased when we are developing items, the questions that we give to our learners. We tend to rely on the lower levels. Maybe because you understand your children, you'll think that if I ask a question on the high order level, they may not be able to manage. And by doing so, you moderate your paper or your question paper, only leaving questions touching on the low levels. That is not fair, according to me, it's not fair to this child. And remember, these children in that classroom are different. And that's why when you're developing those items, ensure that all levels of Bloom's taxonomy are being captured. Okay? Let's go to the next slide, kindly. Now, the next slide, we are talking about the general steps for assessment. Okay? Now, these general steps, we should ensure that before we even assess, we must, as educators, we must plan. Planning is key before you make any form of assessment. Maybe let me ask as educators, when you say that a learner understands, how do you actually know? How do you know that a learner understands what you've taught or has understood what you've just taught? Okay, guys, you can only know this through choosing an appropriate method of assessment. Okay, now maybe we ask ourselves, what exactly, when you are planning, or rather when you are planning, you should ask yourself, what exactly am I going to assess this learner? What should the learner demonstrate? These are the questions that you are asking yourself as an educator before you assess this learner. What exactly am I assessing? What should the learner demonstrate? What behavior or skill am I looking for? Okay. For example, if I've taken my students or my learners or rather to the field to collect specimens, okay, I'll give them one of the instructions, maybe could be use these tools appropriately. You know, I'll have given some instructions. Use this tool appropriately to collect their specimens, or use these tools correctly. So the question is, if I say use this tool correctly, what does correctly mean? What does correctly mean? Okay, those are what will form the basis of us developing the methods of assessment. We are soon diving through the 4 methods of assessment. Okay, I'm not reading the slide word by word, but I'm just trying to share my experience. Presenter, go to the next slide. Moderator, next slide. Perfect. Now we go into the tools, the methods of assessment. You'll agree with me, these are not the only methods. Those guys who do research, you'll find that there are so many other methods. However, the 4 that are recommended, those other methods that you are thinking about will blend very well or will be part of these 4 assessment methods I will discuss in the next few minutes. So I'll start with the first method, which is test. And maybe I give a question again. Out of these 4 methods, colleagues, which one do we prefer as teachers, as educators? You may not answer, but maybe you can type the answer in as a text. You'll be able to read later on. Which one do you have a bias towards? Personally, some years ago, I was so much into testing. Yeah, because I knew the only method of assessing learners is to test by giving written examination. Of course, I knew other methods exist, but my biasness was towards giving a test, written test, for learners to give me the feedback. Later on, I realized that that was not the best. There are other methods of assessment that us educators should explore and use practically in class. So on this first method of tests, we know that tests can come in different ways. It can be oral test. Yeah, it can be written test. It can be oral. I don't know my pronunciation. Maybe Omondi will be able to correct me later on. Oral, starting with AU. Okay, you know, all those and many other forms of tests that you can give. Questionnaire is a form of test. But now the thing you should ask yourself, that in this test should go beyond just recalling. It would be unfair just to ask students name the apparatus used to capture insects. No, it is fine, yes, but it should go beyond just recalling, not just naming the apparatus. So the learner should be allowed to explain how that tool works, the process involved in capturing the insect. So the questions should be developed to go beyond just recalling. Remember, we've talked about the Bloom's taxonomy. So testing should go beyond recalling and touch on other higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Okay. Now, maybe if I may ask, if you have 40 learners in class, okay, and then you give a written test where you asking students recall questions, name this, and maybe these learners were not in class or they missed your lesson, and then you use that score to judge these learners. To me, that would be unfair. And that's why we have other methods of assessment. Okay, so colleagues, you'll allow me to move to number 2, project. Remember, I've said I've not come to teach, or rather to remind ourselves on these methods of assessment. Okay, so next slide, which as test already I've talked about. Move to the next. Project. I remember when I was in high school, we were given a project in agriculture. Ms. Samsungu will attest to this. We planted maize and we were given instructions on how to ensure that this maize would grow and then we harvest. Okay, and I loved that. So it's like some subjects will explore this method or project, whereas some subjects, teachers do not even want to think about them. I'm sure I'm sure of this because of my experience. But I want to plead with my colleagues that in 3 weeks' time, if you are teaching a topic for 3 weeks, ensure that all the 4 methods of assessment have been captured in one way or another. So give these learners a project. Give them clear instructions on what to do. Let them create knowledge through the activities you've given them. And when you are using this method of project, you are targeting the higher level of Bloom's taxonomy. Learners will be able to apply, analyze knowledge, will evaluate, will create. Will be able to create collection field kits. For example, if you are looking at specimen collection, okay? And of course, in my slide, I've also captured about the appropriate tool that can be used for this particular method. In my slide, I was linking them. Of course, my colleagues will be able to present on those tools. So rubric, checklist, rating scale is appropriate. There are appropriate tools that can be used perfectly when you are using a project as a method of assessment. Okay, let's move to number 3. Portfolio. Now, portfolio is key. And again, as teachers, we really overlook this portfolio thing. We tend to imagine that portfolio is for the young learners who are in the lower levels. No, this portfolio applies to all learners up to higher levels. Okay, so and again, as teachers, from my experience, we may think that notes, just checking the notes, you're able to tell about the portfolio of a child, the good handwriting, the diagrams that have been labeled, and everything. Again, to me, that is not enough. Okay, so the portfolio, as educators, we use it to sorry, my time is almost up. The portfolio will tell a story about a child or about a learner, because any learner, when this portfolio is well organized, a teacher will be able to go through and tell a story that this learner, the journey that this learner has gone through. Let's move to number 4 as I wind up. Colleagues, observation has been overused. Observation is one method that as teachers, especially those who are in science, technical subjects, use it. And this is the best. Right away, when you step in that class, already you are carrying out assessment. You're observing the attitude of these learners. Okay? When you give these learners some skills in biology, practically, chemistry, physics, metalwork, you are observing how well they use the tools, how they interact in group discussions. So we use this observation in all minutes of teaching when you're in class. And this observation, to me, it's key because I've used it many times. Okay, so this is purely on the teacher to observe and make comments, observe and record, okay, for future reference and see how the learner has progressed. Let's move to the last as we finish. The last. Yeah, there's another one. Yes, that one. So allow me to introduce some tools which my colleagues will be talking about. So I've talked about those 4 methods, and in each I've tried to link the appropriate tools of assessment. For the test, you can see from the slide, and I'm sure my colleagues will go deeper into each of those tools, and us will be able to understand. And I pray to our God that may God give us wisdom to apply those assessment tools correctly, so that you can have proper records of our learners. Then the last slide is thank you. You know, it has not been shown here, but the last slide is the last one. Go to the last. Go to the last. Oh, yeah. Now, no. Okay. Back again. There's another one. There's a last slide. Yes, that one. Kindly, colleagues, in that classroom, use multiple methods. Do not just rely on observing only or written test. Use appropriate tools in that particular lesson. Cover all Bloom's levels. Do not leave out synthesis, which is the last one. Focus on competencies as you look at the design. You'll be able to be guided. So may God bless you. And I'm sure we're going to continue interacting with you. And may God bless you once more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wawire. Very, very informative. I particularly appreciate the linking of methods with different tools. It's very useful for our classroom experience. We are going right ahead to Winnie Kamodo, who's a mathematics teacher, author. Welcome, Winnie, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Yes, my name is Winnie Kimodo. I am a consultant with the CBE. I'm also a teacher and much more. I feel privileged this afternoon to speak to us, and as we move on, we'll understand more and one another. Yes, thank you. My colleague presenter there before, that is Bona Emmanuel, asked us something concerning what tools we normally use, and as they were given, that is we were supposed to outline. And I actually checked through the wall, and I realized that there are some of us who are talking about the tests. So I want to present something on the test. And before then, I have a Hawaii. What is an assessment tool? And my colleague has already explained that. In this area, it's an instrument that may be used by a teacher. And remember, nowadays we are not teachers, we are facilitators, to determine the extent to which a learner has achieved the specific learning outcome. And the teacher may be guided by the following, that is when you are choosing the tool. Bonaimano has talked to us completely well about the covering, and he has cautioned us that anytime that we're doing any presentation, any assessment, that is, we try to be multiple. We try to assess and look for value. We use varying areas. And this one here may be guided by, or will be guided by, knowledge and skills, evidence that the learner is expected to demonstrate. That is, as you choose on whatever tool, remember, you know, or you should actually address the knowledge and the skill that is that you are expecting to demonstrate, or rather to assess in terms of the skill and the concept. Then you also should look at the performance criteria and the expected evidence. That is, what are you going to, how is it going to be to give you the evidence that this thing has been learned? Bona Emmanuel has asked us, if you asked a student about the knowledge, what they know, how do you know that they know? So therefore, performance criteria and the expected evidence is very, very important. Then from there, the assessment conditions are also very key in determining what to use. Next slide. Why assessment? Why do we assess? CBA tools are instruments that are used to inform. That is one, is to inform the people that are concerned. Remember, you have the administration, remember you have the parents, you have the stakeholders, all of them. You even have the government. The child belongs to the government. So it is one of them is actually meant to inform. You also offer relevant and appropriate interventions. In case you realize that this particular child requires some input here and there, or some assistance here and there, that is very, very necessary. You can only do that with the help of a good assessment tool. Then we also want to determine the level of acquired competencies. Remember, you have competencies. Anytime that you are going to class to teach, remember, you will have the areas that you want to teach. So therefore, it may help us. These assessment tools will help us to determine the level that we have acquired and give us finally feedback to the learner and also to the stakeholders. And we also be required to, or we are expected to, collect information on the acquisition of the competencies by the learner himself. So therefore, all this is very, very important in that particular, when you're choosing or when you're going for whichever assessment tool. Next one, I'm moving in a hurry. Next slide. The next one is now about the written, and as my former facilitator mentioned, this one is actually an example of the written tests. The written tests is actually an example of the tests that we had among the 4 methods. And what is a written test? These are formal assessments such as quizzes, all examinations. If I had enough time, I would have asked us to post on the wall what kind of testing we do. But of course, I expect now answers like the quizzes, the examinations. Some of us will talk about the rats. Some of us will talk about the series and all that and all that. They require learners to provide written responses to questions or prompts. That's why they are called written tests, because the child will be required to write, put down something. Then written tests should be carefully aligned with the concepts and the skills outlined in the curriculum design. We are teaching, we are facilitators that are following some conditions that are from the designs, and therefore we should actually prepare our tests in alignment with the concepts, the knowledge, the skills, the values, and all that and all that. Informative, which we actually all know that it is actually the ongoing assessment. How is written test helping us? Written tests are used to assess learners' understanding of concepts and the development of the skills during the learning process. Remember, formative is ongoing in the process. So therefore, these tests will really help us to keep the children on toes, to ensure that every particular bit, every step, every situation, we are very much informed, and we don't make a mistake of leaving any child behind. And when we come to the summative assessment, the same written tests will actually be used to evaluate specific learning outcomes that learners have achieved at the end of a unit or even a course at the end of it all. Like now, we are having grade 10s. They actually came from grade 9, and they actually did Kijisea. That is one of the summative assessment that will actually be helping us in that area, or that actually helped for that particular situation. With the next slide, kindly. When considering written test, when considering a written test, the following guidelines may help the facilitator. 1, the tasks that are designed according to the predetermined criteria to measure competencies, and also to elicit, to produce, to show, to portray evidence on the achievement of the learning outcome. Allow me to go to the next slide about the sample of a written test. Now, in this area, I've given just an example. Remember, this one is just one. The tests are many, as we have said. I've talked about the quizzes. I've talked about the examinations that we are used to with the 844. I've talked about the RAT. So it may take different formats, but the example that I have given here is one that will involve the administrative detail. If you can actually access, if you can read that, I have my learner's name is David Mino. The school is Imani Senior School. The subject is mathematics. And remember, in mathematics, we have either the core or the essential mathematics. Then the strand, this one is coming from core mathematics, measurements and numbers. Then the substrate of the quadratic expressions and equations. And with SLO, that is a specific learning outcome of factorizing quadratic expressions. That is a simple written test. Then when you go to the next slide, facilitator, thank you. A sample of a written test continued. That is, the question is, factorize the following quadratic expressions. And remember, in this area of quadratic expressions, you have so many subsections: factorizing, solving, and all that. So this is just one among the many tests that you may be. I just chose only one of these. And in this area here, we are asking ourselves, if a child is given factorize the following quadratic expression, x squared plus x minus 12, and these written tests, they should be accompanied by good marking schemes, because a good marking scheme will give a viable report about every particular student. And with this kind of yeah, thank you. We mute Mike's kiasi too. Yes, thank you very much. So with this one here, I have already a marking scheme. With this particular kind of a question, I will want the child to identify two numbers whose sum is 1. Of course, I'll have explained to them where 1 is coming from, the coefficient of the middle term, and the product of the two numbers will be -4. And then the numbers will be 4 and -3, that is. And in this area here, remember, according to what you want to test, the skill and the knowledge, it depends on where you may put your methods, your marks. And in this case here, my question had 3 marks. So I will actually give an M1. M1 represents method, that is a term or a terminology that is used in mathematics. M1, that is for what? And you identify correct pair of numbers. Because remember, with the product being -12, you have so many numbers. But for the child to identify now for a -1, which gives now the sum of 1, is actually a step worth awarding a mark. Then my other mark goes to when the child has paired up and factorized the quadratic equation, that is after getting the two numbers and writing the middle term in terms of those two numbers. Then from there, he pairs up and factorizes. I want to give a mark for that. Then factors are x plus 4 and x minus 3. That is for extracting the correct set of numbers, or factors, another M1, total 3 marks. Therefore, in this area here, I've given actually a keynote. That is, when you're making the marking scheme for a written test, it should be a good marking scheme and it should be a corrective one. What do I mean by a corrective one? We have seen situations whereby a student, when they are expanding, for instance, you can see up there in the second line, that line from below, you can see a -3 outside there. Inside the bracket, x plus 4, close the bracket. You have seen that some students, when they are expanding this kind of an expression, some of them will forget that -3 multiplied by +4 gives you a -12. But then some of them will put the positive that is there before 12. So in this case here, I would ask us to devise a way whereby you'll be correcting. You'd be doing a corrective marking. You correct. That means you can even circle, decide or opt to circle the area that has a problem. So that is what we call corrective marking. Allow me to go to the next slide. And the moment that I have done that, then using my written test and I've marked using a marking scheme that is fair, that is easy, and that is friendly, that can even allow for in case the learner has a different method, all those are necessary to have in mind. So it is also good now to give a feedback, because this feedback here may help the child. It can also help the parent and other stakeholders. For me, in this particular test, I've given an example of our feedback. That is David. Remember, this is now David from up there. David correctly factorized the expression that was given. Then he portrays correct application of the knowledge gained in the number addition and subtraction in order to get the required pair of the sum, for the sum and the product of 1 and -12 respectively. I'm actually giving a summary to the one who is looking at his work to see exactly what I was looking for, and I'm actually summarizing for him. I've also said that he applied, I'm reporting that he also applied the law of substitution well as factoring out common terms. This made it possible for him to extract the correct factors for the algebraic expression, such that even someone who doesn't know how to follow the M1, the A1, and all that, like a parent who is able to read and understand English, can actually follow through the child's work. Then after that, I would give a report that is to highlight on what I need to do, or what the parent or the stakeholder needs to do to help me help the child, or we help the child. So on the reporting about this kind of work, I have actually chosen an example of reporting the overall performance of David. Kindly mute, yes, to mute, so that Otiko kindly, Otiko kindly mute kidogo. Otiko kindly mute. Thank you, thank you. I'm saying once you have marked your work, it is also good to give a report. And I've chosen an example of a report for like this. The overall performance on factorization of quadratic expressions is exceeding expectations. That is for David in this particular case. And in this case, I say, well done. Oh, you know, these comments here are very, very enriching. They really help these learners. A small thing, like something like a good, is very, very important in the life of a child. So let's not take them lightly. Then I've also given some information that he should be encouraged to continue working hard using past papers, class assignments, and quizzes done in and out of class from time to time. So that is actually about the written tests and the kind of some examples of feedback. It may not go exactly like the way I have put for every one of us, because every child will have performed differently. Allow me to go to the next area, that is the assessment rubric. With the assessment rubric, according to what my colleague facilitator before, Emmanuel, was asking us, he actually gave us this rubric. It is actually a way of assessing in the project area. So therefore, in the assessment rubric, it's an assessment tool used to interpret and assess learners' performance in a task. It consists of 3 items. That is, we have a criteria, we have descriptors, and we have performance levels. And what is a criteria? A criteria is very precise and clear standard or rule that is to be used to judge the achievement of a certain competence, a skill, or a value. It tells what to assess, as you will see in the example that I'm going to give later. Then we'll also have descriptors. What are descriptors? The descriptors are detailed statements telling the level or the depth of performance for each criterion, as we have seen up there. Then the performance levels will be in the CBE. It's simply a statement that defines the degree of mastery. Degree. We have levels of a competence, a skill, or a value. Common performance levels in CBE are exceeding expectations. That is the ones that have been given or allowed, given a go-ahead by the ministry. Exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, approaching expectations, and also below expectations. And every one of them is actually a performance level that shows us the degree or the mastery of concepts by the specific learners. Now, we go to the next types of rubrics. I've already defined what rubrics are. Now, types of rubrics, we have 2 of them. There's one that is called analytic, and the other one that is called holistic. And I'll go through them one by one, of course, in a hurry kiasi, for the sake of time. Next slide is about, next slide, thank you, analytic rubric. Analytic, this type of rubric has the following characteristics. It breaks down tasks being assessed into smaller components or parts. And you see it in the example. Each part is assessed separately. That is what you have about that. Then after that, I have now a sample of the analytic rubric. And I've given an example in mathematics. I'm a teacher of mathematics. Strand is measurements and geometry. Substrand is 2.4 trigonometry 1 task. David was walking to school when he saw a bird perching on a tree 10 meters away. He estimated the angle of elevation to be 35 degrees. Using the information given, A or 1, sketch the geometrical figure representing the description. Explain your geometrical figure in your classroom. Now, why did I choose to do this? You have realized the mathematics teachers that we have around, you realize that such kind of problems, we cannot actually solve them using trigonometric ratios, that is in Form 2. Then in Form 1, this kind of information, we would also do it by scale drawing. So therefore, in scale drawing, we needed to actually do some sketch to know exactly what the real item will be. So therefore, it's very necessary for the child to know what to represent for what. And when you go beyond that, get to the next level, I've prepared a sample of analytic rubric And remember, we said analytic rubric is the one that breaks down. If you look at the first column, it is talking about the criteria. And this criteria is about, now, look at the first line. I've broken down my task into 2 sections. That is sketching a right-angled triangle at the base of a vertical electric pole, which is a straight line. You see, the bird was perching on top of an electric pole. So in this case here, in the drawing, I expect a straight line vertical, which is vertical to the ground, and it is located 10 meters from a horizontal point at an angle of 35 degrees. And the angle at 35 degrees is actually the point that is supposed to be 10 meters away from the foot of the pole. Then from there, the second part of this task is displaying and explaining to classmates the well-labeled figure. Then on the expectations now, sorry, on the criteria, next to that I have exceeding expectations. So then now these are the areas that I'm now going to look at or to assess. For the child who will be exceeding expectations, he has to accurately and neatly and correctly sketch the right-angled triangle with the 90 degrees shown at the foot of the vertical cliff or vertical line, and 10 meters shown on a horizontal level to the point that makes an elevation angle of 35 degrees. That is for that particular first area. Then on the same exceeding expectation, for the displaying, what am I expected to see for me to give him exceeding expectation? Down there, you have displays neat work and confidently explains using the correct geometrical terms and the applications to real-life situations, and with the relevant reasons, the processes involved, the reasons in creating the sketch. Now, when you look at that, exceeding expectations and meeting expectations, now the same way as I read through, I need to see correct sketches on right-angled triangle, the matchbox, sorry, not the max, but here this is about the lines this is about the angle, the triangle that would be 90 degrees or that. Then he displays correct work that is neatly done with the final sketch. Then let's look at the approaching expectations. That is sketches the right angled triangle with the right angle not accurately shown and given the side, not well or correctly identified, all labeled. That is for the approaching expectation. And down there, for me to give the approaching expectation, he'll have to display neat work but not able to explain some of the processes and reasons involved in creating the final sketch. And that for the child to get below expectations, he has a challenge. I'll have to identify that he has a challenge creating the right angled triangle, even shown at the vertex, and even the horizontal side not shown. On him not displaying work well, or even accurately sketching the work and reasons not given. What I want to say here is that when you look at this exceeding expectation and meeting expectation, you realize that there's a very thin line between these two. And with exceeding, you really have to realize that the child has explained so well and has even gone beyond that. And I want to explain that I go out of that. I say that in this area, mathematics teachers will tell me that some students will even go ahead and explain and show you the lines that are opposite, the lines that are adjacent, the lines that are hypotenuse, especially the line that is opposite the right angle of the triangle. That is the line that we call the hypotenuse. But in some areas, you realize that the child will have some problems here and there. Yes, allow me to go to the holistic rubric. Holistic rubric. Yes, this type of rubric has the following characteristics. If you worked with me, you realize that the analytic rubric broke down the activity. But in this one here, it will assess the overall performance on a test on a single identity, and the scores for the overall competence of the learner will actually be given. That is the overall. It will not even actually break down. it will actually look at it overall. Then next, allow me to go to the sample of the holistic rubric sample. Yes, thank you. Now, the same way, criteria is sketching the geometrical figure, representing the information and explaining the final sketch. Then, for the exceeding expectation, I'll have to see accurately, neatly, and correctly sketches drawn on a right-angled triangle showing clearly the right angle with the 90 degrees and the given horizontal side 10 meters indicated and confidently explains using the correct geometrical terms all the processes involved in arriving at the final sketch. You realize that all through, with the exceeding, the meeting, the approaching, actually all of them, everything, the sketches and all that will actually be done at one particular level. So allow me to go to the final one, that is using, how do we use the rubrics effectively? That is, in order to successfully achieve the outcomes with the use of a rubrics, it is necessary to tailor the rubric based on the learning outcome. Use the rubric as the basis for feedback, and assess learners based on the rubric. Don't change goalposts. Let them know. You can also share the rubric with the learners during the formative or the ongoing assessment. And finally, that is all what I have to say concerning the rubrics. I want to hand over the mic to my moderator, Madam. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very, very thorough work on those assessment tools. Thank you. We're going to go directly to Francis Musungu, agriculture expert. Here we have it, the next assessment tools. Thank you. And we trust you'll stay with us even as we move through these tools. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Francis, you should be up now. Covering observation schedule and project. Yes, thank you. And if we could have all other mics muted, please. If your mic is not muted, Mr. Kazungu, please. Yes, Francis, go ahead. Francis, you are mute. If you've started speaking, we're not hearing you. Thank you. There.
I have muted.
Again, it's mute. I think maybe it's being muted from another side. Please unmute, Francis. Francis, we're not getting you. We have your slide. There you go.
Yeah, I'm saying that I will mute now so that you can proceed, please.
Okay, we need Francis for presentation. If we're not ready for that, we could proceed to the next speaker, the next presenter. But for you to give us the presentation on observation schedule and projects, Mr. Musungu, please unmute your mic and proceed. We're ready for you. Okay, there could be a technical issue. Let me consult. Could we hear from Francis? If not, we'll go ahead to the next presenter, Mr. Otieno.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, thank you.
Mr. Otieno speaking, Kevin Otieno.
Yes, thank you. Geography, go for it.
I would wish to, the person sharing the slides, you can move to number 5. That is slide number, page number 37.
Questionnaire.
Yes. So Kevin Otieno is a teacher, CBC consultant, at the same time examiner in geography, trained both in paper 1 and paper 2, that is 844 system. Now, I would wish to take us through 2.1. We want to talk about a questionnaire. And allow me start by saying that a questionnaire is just a list of questions on various aspects of a learner. Learners or respondents to give honest opinions or views. So colleague teachers, basically we are saying a questionnaire is one of the tools, and it's good to note that it is both, it's one of the tools that we can use. And this particular tool, I wanted to say that it has 2 different types that I've listed there. We are talking about a questionnaire being either open-ended or closed-ended. Allow me just to elaborate this briefly. When you talk about a questionnaire being a set of questions that we're going to use to check on how the learners progress in different aspects, it's important to note that when I talk about the 2 types of questionnaires, when I talk about open-ended questionnaire, I'm referring to a questionnaire that is not structured. We can refer to it as unstructured questionnaire. We'll give an example, but allow me just for this, just to say, supposing you are to ask a student a question, maybe like, what is your name? And then I leave it open with a question mark without having any restriction. That is what I'm referring to as an open-ended questionnaire. Number 2, we have the second type, which I've talked about, which is closed-ended questionnaire. It is also referred to as structured questionnaire. This is where the responses of the learner is restricted to a given response. That is to say, maybe I can ask you, what is geography? Then I give you maybe 2 answers. It is a study of Earth as a home of man, or geography is this. So your work would be to choose and to give me the best answer. Alternatively, I would ask you, what is this? Then I would request, I would want you to use either a tick or an X. So in short, colleagues, when you talk about closed-ended questionnaires, I'm referring to where you'll be giving responses. The response is predetermined. And the only advantage of closed-ended questionnaires, we'll see later, it's very easy for teachers to analyze. And especially when we now get to CBC, it's one of the things that I would encourage that we use for analysis and checking on the learner's developmental aspects in terms of learning. The second aspect, we are talking about components of a questionnaire. A good questionnaire must have these components. As a teacher, ensure that your questionnaire has a title. And I'll give an example. Number 2, when you talk about a title, I'm talking about maybe, if it's geography, for example, I pick one of the topics called rocks. Maybe I'll have that as my what? As my title. Then number 2, administrative information. Here, we are referring to things to do with the school. If your paper already is printed on a paper with a logo, then you'll just talk about administrative information being the name of the student, the class, and even the date upon which you are administering this particular questionnaire. Number 3, we have general instructions. General instructions here will only be guiding the student on how to go about. For example, when you talk about take only one answer unless stated otherwise. So that is what I'm referring to as a general instruction, which must be part of a what? A questionnaire. Next, we have the questionnaire interview. Just before that, there is a questionnaire interview. Items, or the specific questions. If the topic is rocks, we'll see a sample. Then you now need to have that as part of the questionnaire as number 4. Then lastly, we are talking about specific instructions on how to respond to the questions. That is either you can tell them using a tick or an X, or just telling them pick appropriately. And finally, we have the conclusion next. In this next slide, colleagues, these are sample of a questionnaire. So we are saying, I've discussed the aspects of a questionnaire. Like you can see, we have the title, whereby we talk about the learners, maybe understanding of rocks. That is my title. Rocks is one of our topics that we are having in book grade 10. Then number 2, at B, we are talking about administrative information. I've already elaborated here. You can include school, which I have not included in the presentation, but if we already have it in our printout in terms of our maybe the logo in the exam, in the questionnaire that you'll be administering, there is no need of including. But if there isn't, you can include the school, the name, the class, and the date. Next, we have part C. We're talking about the general instructions. For example, I've just talked about answer all questions honestly. Then next instruction is tick the correct answer where applicable. Next slide. In this next slide, we are seeing the fourth aspect, which we said the questionnaire items or questions. Now, colleagues, here we've simply picked something in line with geography, and here these are questions from the topic called rocks, as the title had indicated. And you can see we are talking about the first one. We're talking about, have you ever seen or collected rocks? Then we expect a student to tell us yes or no. This is what I called or I referred to as closed-ended questionnaire, where we expect a student to give us a given answer. So the answering is directed. Then we have, if yes, where did you see or collect the rocks? Where you see the question mark at the end of it, now that is what I'm referring to as a open-ended questionnaire. It gives room for the student to explain where they collected rocks. And the advantage of this, when I talk about now the last bit of it, the open-ended questionnaire, it enables the respondent or the learner in this case to give us additional information. For example, you could just ask a learner, where did you see or collect rocks? Then the learner may tell you, maybe let me say Nairobi, specifically, maybe let me talk about Dagoretti. Then the learner may go ahead. After talking about Dagoretti, the learner may go ahead to tell you maybe the name of the village. So as a respondent, as a researcher, or as a teacher, or as a facilitator, you'll be able to get additional information. Next, which of the following types of rocks do you know? You take all that, apply. So I've listed the types of rocks there. And again, there is the last aspect where we say, I don't know, because we give room. Not all of them will be able to maybe mention the rocks. But then, can rocks be useful to people? Yes or no? That is what we call a closed-ended questionnaire. Then if yes, mention the use of rocks. Finally, how often do you observe rocks in your environment? Then we have the options there. So generally, colleagues, this questionnaire, as I've discussed it, is a mixture of both open-ended and closed questionnaire, open-ended and closed questionnaire. Next slide. We have part 5, which is part E, specific instructions. Here we said as a component, you must guide your learners so that whatever questions you are giving, they are able to answer appropriately. Remember, you may not have all the time based on the number of students we are having in grade 10 or in our classes. And this is one of the tools that we are supposed to use. So it's important to give instructions so that even your analysis of rating these students is also made easier. So one, we are saying, tick only the answers unless stated otherwise. Then for open-ended questionnaires, give short and clear answers. Finally, part F, we have a conclusion. Here, we are giving an example of what you could give as a feedback to the learner. For example, I'm just saying, thank you for your response. Your answers will help the teacher to understand your knowledge about rocks and improve the learning process. So colleagues, this conclusion is very important, and it's important that we take note that this particular aspect of questionnaires may not only work at this level of grade 10, 11, and 12. Otherwise, I believe all of us here as colleagues, teachers, I believe for those who have gone even for further studies, even during field work, we've used or we've applied this particular concept of questionnaires. And so this is one area that I would encourage not only the geography teachers, but teachers across board to try and apply it. And even as well, try giving it to the learners so that they could be able to try using it elsewhere in collection of data. Now, as a conclusion to this, allow me just say this. A question may arise. I know colleagues may be wondering, at what point am I able to apply a questionnaire in my as a tool in my assessment? Now, some of the areas where you could easily apply questionnaires would include maybe field activities for us in geography. That would be very relevant for us. You can give it to the learners to assess them. The learners themselves could also use the same while collecting data in the field. Then again, you could also use questionnaires when learners are doing projects or investigations. So a questionnaire could even be used to check on the progress of a project. Next, we can also use the same when we are talking about when we are trying to assess prior knowledge before the lesson. You could just come in, use a questionnaire just before your lesson, just to check on how the learners are doing. At the same time, colleagues, we could use a questionnaire to evaluate the understanding after the learning of a what? Of a topic, like what I've just given you. Then even other than that, finally, we could even use questionnaires in continuous assessment through the portfolios. And so with that, allow me proceed to the next slide, which is my number 6, which is my second tool today. That is what we call a portfolio. Now, when you talk about a portfolio, we are referring to a powerful collection of learners' work. This has not been much before in our classrooms or in our assessments. We've not used it much, but I think back in primary, we could see much of this in 844 system being used. So we are saying it shows effort, progress, mastery of specified learning outcomes or competencies. And we are saying it also provides evidence of achievement of a mastery over a period of time. So colleagues, there are different types of portfolios as we've listed. Majorly, there are 3. One is a working portfolio. 2, we have a showcase portfolio, and we have assessment portfolio. When you talk about a working portfolio, we are simply referring to the collection of learners' work in progress or completed samples of work. But showcase portfolio is that one which is created by a learner to display their best work. Then finally, when you talk about assessment portfolio, this is the one that we use to document a learner's mastery of skill or competencies in a particular learning area. It contains samples of learners' work that has been assessed by the teacher. So I believe, colleagues, with that, we are able to see which portfolio to put emphasis on and how to differentiate the 3, especially when we are doing assessments. In my next slide, there is a sample of how a portfolio would look like. I know as colleagues, the system being a new one, we should be able to get much of these samples so that we can easily just draft them and use them in class. So in my sample, you can see we started with what we are calling the school. Then we are having the administrative information where the school is there. We've used Uzuri Senior School. Then the strand, which currently we are still calling a topic in 844, the strand is practical geography. And the sub-strand in this case, that is a subtopic currently in 844, we are talking about map reading and interpretation. Grade, of course, it is grade 10. The subject is geography. Then now, in my portfolio, we have the task to be performed and the activities and the progress. So under task, you see, we've talked about enlarge part of thicker map bound by eastern 30 to 34 and northern 20 to 28. So this is an enlargement, and the project activity and the progress, we have time, activity, and possibly what would be applicable, which is pictures. So you realize that in terms of time, we are referring to the project activity. Maybe you can decide that we'll be doing this in maybe one of the lessons, or you can have it being done in different lessons based on the content to be covered. Then now step 1, We are talking about identifying the area to be enlarged. Of course, we are using a picture. Step 2, they measure the length and the width of the identified area. Step 3, we are talking about multiplying the length and the width by the scale factor given. Step 4, creating an enlargement frame. Step 5, drawing an enlargement in grid squares. Step 6, transferring the features from original map onto the drawn frame. Now, when you look at this content covered here, this portfolio may not need days or even weeks. This is something that before we could cover within one lesson of maximum of 40 minutes or even less. So alongside this, I know like now being a geography teacher, this is an enlargement. The same portfolio, the same structure, colleagues, could be applicable when you are talking about maybe drawing a cross-section in geography. You could still highlight the steps, which could also still be done within a maximum of 40 minutes in a lesson. The same will still be applicable when talking about things to do with a reduction, which is the opposite of enlargement. So colleagues, I think even in mathematics, across board, we could come up with particular tasks where we can apply the same. Then as you can see, down there, we have an area where we comment. As a teacher, you are expected to comment on the learner's profile, and then the learner should be able to put a signature. At the far end, you can see we should be having the learner putting a signature, and of course, the teacher also signing as a way of showing that this document has been gone through and verified in terms of assessing the learner. Now, colleagues, it's important that any other time that such a thing is done, it's good that we emphasize on the strengths of the students. For example, in this case, if the student has done a good job, I would look at something to do with maybe a good creativity, clear understanding of the concept, and even active participation. Because remember, this is a task that is involving students to be hands-on. So when working on a portfolio, such strengths should always come out when you kind of maybe advise the learners or something related to the same. At the same time, as a teacher, in your portfolio, you should be able to identify areas that the learners should be able to improve. For example, you can tell the learner, maybe add more explanations or improve on labeling your diagrams, like in this case. And finally, as a teacher, just to say, let us have positive comments. Let us avoid negativity so that we encourage our learners to keep on working. For example, just tell them good work, keep it up. So let us have those positive adjectives to encourage our learners in terms of the work that they do. Otherwise, I wish to stop at that. And thank you all for listening as I request for the next presenter be brought on board. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very concise and informative. Thank you. We're going to go to Francis Musungu now. I believe that's ready. The slide to be brought up is for agriculture observation schedule, please, on the slides. And welcome, Francis.
Excuse me, Dan.
Yes, sorry.
Zungu, please, you have 5 minutes. 5 minutes,
right.
and then
Okay.
we move on to the next 25 minutes. Here, we invite the next speaker, and all of us have now 5 minutes to be done. Strictly 5.
All right.
Okay.
It's okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Welcome. My name is Francis Musungu, an educator. I'm an author, and I'm also a CB consultant. And to take you through observation, and straight to the point, observation is a method of assessment that involves evaluating the learner by directly watching them perform a learning task in real time. To put it in context, you remember how home science is assessed in KCSE, where a student, for example, cooks, and when they are done with cooking and they have washed the utensils, the teacher will come and award marks. That is not observation in CBE sense. In CBE sense, observation means that you evaluate, you watch as the learner performs the task in real time. And as the teacher or the facilitator does the assessment, they also provide authentic evidence of skills, knowledge, and behavior that is exhibited by the learner on the spot. So you don't watch the learner perform a task and then you go away and award marks or comment later. You award on the spot. Now, when you are assessing by observation, we mostly use an observation schedule. That is the assessment tool for observation. And it is a tool that outlines characteristics and behavior that a learner shows during performance. When you look at that tool, we will be looking at a sample observation schedule ahead. When you look at it, you see what I mean, that it outlines the characteristics and behavior that a learner shows during performance of a task. Now, when do we use observation as a method of assessment? Observation is highly recommended for skill-based learning activities. I'll give an example from my subject area, that is agriculture, in our text, or even if you don't have our text, Moran Agriculture Grade 10, if you have the curriculum design, I'm talking about Substrand 1.4, that is field management practices. I have the concepts of vegetable pruning there. In our text, that one is in activity 2 on page 57, activity 3 on page 59 to 61, and activity 4 on page 61 to 62. Then you move to Substrand 1.6, crop protection is the substrand there that is specifically weed control. And the concepts of carrying out weed control using appropriate methods, those are skill-based activities there. So as learners perform those activities, the facilitator will be watching them and awarding. If you're going to award marks, if you're going to make any comments, you watch and do the necessary. Let's move on to the next. The features of observation. Features, features of observational assessment. Now, there are 4 things. Observation focuses on specific learning outcomes and competencies which are derived from activities learning, lesson learning outcomes. And when you look at the outcomes, you notice one thing, that they reflect the 3 learning domains. So it focuses on those specific learning outcomes. You will see them when we look at the sample observation schedule. Number 2, another feature of observational assessment is that observation is conducted in a natural setting. That is, whether it is a classroom, whether it is the farm, which is an authentic environment, as opposed to a situation where learners perform a task and then you can give them a test elsewhere. After they have performed the task, you give them a test elsewhere out of the environment in which they conducted that task. And number 3, it is used daily for feedback to guide or reflect on learners' progress. It also captures both quantitative and qualitative aspects of task performance. Quantitative and qualitative. Qualitative, I mean the affective domain, and quantitative, that is the skills and the knowledge. You can measure the amount of knowledge they have. You can see the level of skills that they have. And you can also, the qualitative aspect means that you can also identify the values, you can identify the attitude as the learner performs the task. And finally, it identifies areas that need support in the learner. Please bring up the sample observation schedule so that we can talk about. Yes, I'll not talk about the administrative information there, but down there you can see the competency. You remember I said that it focuses on competencies. It focuses on specific learning outcomes and competencies. There is a competency there. For example, this particular activity was carrying out experiments using soil samples to examine various components of the soil. There is a specific competency here. When you look at our design, there are two competencies, but for this particular activity, there is only one specific competency, which is critical thinking and problem solving. The second one, kindly enlarge the font. I'm unable to see clearly. Yes, thank you. Now, the competence is there. Then there is observation that the learner, there is an observation that the teacher is going to make as the learner performs the task there, and the teacher is going to give their comments. Now, comments are very important. That space for comments is very important because that is where the feedback is. Remember, we are talking about assessment and feedback. You have assessed, you have given it there, and then you give your final comments. And that is what the other stakeholders are going to rely on to see the progress that the learner is making there. Can we move on to the next assessment method, that is project? Because of time, I think we just move on to the next assessment, which is project. If I'm going to talk about project, I had prepared, yes, project. Now, project is another assessment method that we can use in assessing agriculture and giving a report. And project involves a set of activities that are carried out to evaluate the ability, of the learner to apply knowledge, skills acquired in class in real life situation. Remember the last time we had the webinar, we talked about project as a methodology, as a pedagogical strategy. But now we are talking about project as a method of assessment. Now, if we are using project as a method of assessment, it means that you have to teach the concept first, and then, or concepts. Remember, ahead you'll read that we apply project where, for example, a substrand has quite a number of closely related concepts. So after you have gone through that substrand and you have taught, now you engage the learners, you ask the learners to identify a problem so that you can apply this knowledge and the skills to solve that problem. That is why we are saying here that it is a set of activities that are carried out to evaluate ability to apply knowledge and skills acquired in class. Now, the good thing with the projects is that projects engage learners in active, real world problem solving to evaluate their skills, application of knowledge, and also critical thinking. When we use project work as a method of assessment, project is highly recommended for a substrand that has highly interconnected concepts. I've given an example from our text or from the curriculum design, substrand 1.5, which is about growing a selected crop. Now, in our text, we have activities 1 all the way to 7. When you look at those activities, and even when you look at the curriculum design, we have nursery bed establishment, nursery bed management, crop establishment, and field management practices. All these are concepts that are related, and they aim at achieving one goal. So after you have taken learners through that in class, then you can take them to the farm, you can ask them to identify a problem in the society, in the locality, in school, to which they can apply the knowledge and the skills they have learned to solve that problem. You will see it in the example ahead. A continuation of project. A project measures competencies, skills, knowledge at a go, right? Please, if you could put it up, the next slide, a continuation of slide of a project. Yes, I've said that a project measures competencies, skills, and knowledge at a go, and it facilitates both formative, that is ongoing, and summative evaluation. You can have projects at the beginning, and that is if you're going to do project for learning, or at the end, if you are going to do project for evaluation. How do we assess? What tools do we use for assessment using project? We use a project portfolio. That is the most appropriate, but you could still use other tools like the rubric, the observation schedules, rating scales, checklists, as well as journals. Features of project, very important. A project must have a time frame. The activities are implemented within a given time frame that is clearly stated at the beginning of the project. That is an important feature of a project. It has a time frame. It is not like an income generating project in school that will take forever. Learners will come, they'll clear. If you're doing project for evaluation, then you must have a time frame. And number two, a project always has milestones. That is specified significant stages that represent progress project. Next slide, please. Benefits of project. If you have it, benefits. Projects promote deeper learning, they increase engagement, and also reflect real world scenarios. The next slide, let's now look at a sample project. Sample project, next slide, please. Yes, like I had told you earlier, I've given an example from the agriculture. I'm sure I'm not biased in the interest of equity or fairness. My predecessors have given examples from their areas of learning. Now, I've also given an example from my area of learning, which is agriculture. I had told you that we have used 1.5 from the curriculum design, substrand 1.5 as our perfect example. And in this 1.5, after the learner, sorry, it is 1.6, not 1.5. It is 1.6. Hold on. Yes. It is 1.5, sorry. Now, after you have taken learners through those 4 areas, nursery, bed establishment, all the way to field management practices, and now you ask learners to identify challenges that farmers in the locality face when they are growing crops, particularly those crops that are established through a nursery. And then you ask the learners to select a crop which is established through a nursery. Ask the learners to discuss and suggest innovative techniques that can help to mitigate against the challenges identified. And then lastly, the learners will design and implement a crop growing enterprise with innovative techniques to address the challenges that have been and you must stick to whatever has class. You are evaluating at one level, then allow the next person to take us through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Musungu. Francis, very practical, very applicable. We appreciate that insight. We're going to our English author, Joseph Dirangu, yes, to speak about anecdotal records and oral tests. Thank you. Anecdotal records and journal, sorry. Go ahead, please. Joseph, welcome.
Good evening. I am tackling anecdotal records and assessment journal. Anecdotal comes from the word anecdote. An anecdote is a short, simple story about a real happening. And therefore, these are records that are based on real happenings in the classroom. It's an account of those events in the learner's day that happen immediately. I mean, that they happen, and we record as they happen or immediately after. And that means right there in the classroom, your eyes and ears are open, you can see what is happening, and you are going to record things that may never end up in our MacBooks as such, because this is a record of their behavior. So this event or that happening in the classroom we described using written reports. You could also use a photograph. That means you have your camera, you take stills, or you can take a video for that matter, especially when they could be performing a narrative, or even make an audio record to capture pronunciation and the use of expressive reading, the like, as it happens. An anecdotal record provides teachers with a collection of narratives that can be used to showcase a learner's progress over time. And this is something that you could easily share with a parent or guardian, should they want to know things that they cannot see in the progress report that you provide at the end of the term or year. We record specific observations of a learner's behavior, skills, and attitudes. And those are very important words. Learner's behavior. What is the learner doing? That is what we ask ourselves. In whatever that learner is doing, what skills can we deduce from that? And what are their attitudes? It's that the last one is value laden, but from the learner's behavior, we are able to deduce the attitude they have towards what is happening in the class at a particular time. Let's move to the next slide. Where do these feature under CBE, or why are they part of CBE? It's because you're able to track individuals' learner progress over time. And that means we will have several anecdotal records. Records of various happenings in all skills, in all skill areas, maybe reading, speaking, listening, writing, grammar. And then we will have like what we call a case study in research. So we will have progress records over time that shows how a learner has moved from point A to point B to point C in a particular concept area. It will also help us provide feedback to the learner, school admin, parents, or guardians. And in this case, we are able to provide very specific, focused reports that will help the learner note their strengths, note their weaknesses, that will help the teachers to make instructional decisions, and especially when we want to bring in interventions. Remember, we sometimes talk about IEPs, individual education program, and in this case, such an intervention, we will be able to institute it when we have such a progress record over time. It supports holistic assessment. It is aligned to CBE's emphasis on observable behavior. So when we use anecdotal records, next slide. There are those things that a teacher cannot put a figure on and give it a figure or give it a numerical value. These are the things we see. Some of them may seem mundane, but then there will always be that happening that takes place in a learner's in a learner's life in the classroom, and you say this is worth noting. I would like to draw your attention to what the photographer does when there is a function. They don't take all the photos. They look at what is interesting, what needs to be captured. And therefore, as teachers, we look at what is happening in the learner's life. If in a class, let's say in a grammar class, in a writing class, what is worth noting? And then we note that down as part of our anecdotal record. So we do this during learning activities when the teacher observes a learner demonstrating a behavior, skill, or attitude. Probably you noted the learner gave a very beautiful contribution during debate or during a group discussion or during class discussion, and you want to note that down. Someone has used the very expressive voice. Somebody was very confident. Another person has treated others, the views from others so well, and we know that is an expression of value, respect, and the like. Let's look at the sample that we have. We have a sample anecdotal record that you can see. It has administrative details, and then we have the description of the event, because this is what is most important, how we put it down and what do we put down, and we put it as it is without judging or interpreting, just like you would be a participant observer in a qualitative research. That is what we do. Wafula was in a simulated hotel setting during a class activity. He greeted guests politely, assisted them to their seats, and demonstrated good table manners while serving food. Later, he answered a telephone call using appropriate language, listened attentively, and responded respectfully. We don't judge, we just indicate what we observe. Then, in which setting did this happen? This was a classroom role play activity on hotel, table, and telephone etiquette. Then we'll have the teacher's comments that Wafula demonstrated appropriate hotel, and table, and telephone etiquette in different contexts. He showed confidence, politeness, and good communication skills. This anecdotal record can be made in any other learning area. Probably it would have been geography, as they draw a cross-section, you would still do the same. Or in mathematics, as they do construction, you would still do the same. Let's move to the next slide. I want to move over from anecdotal records and talk about assessment journal. A journal, you know what that one suggests. It's like a private diary. It's a diary. But now this one is focused on our learning activities in the classroom. And this entails the learner keeping a record of their personal feelings, thoughts, experiences, and activities on a daily basis. They are therefore records of past events or happenings in a learner's life. I know we are aware that what we observe in a learner on the outside is not enough, because even when you talk about looking at learners' entry behavior, there will always be the attitude, there will always be the feelings, there will always be the cultural pattern, where they come from, what they know, what they brought from home. And this is what helps them in interpreting what we give them in class, in absorbing what they learn. And at the end of the day, we expect them to respond to what we have taught them, because they were not empty. They are human beings, they are not empty. And this is how we are able to write an assessment journal on what we see. I mean, not we, the learners write the assessment journal from their own point of view. Remember, CBE is learner-centered learning. So this journal that they write will help us to track through what we track how they are developing through time. We can move the next slide. I want to give a sample here. This is our assessment journal from Maba Senior School, and we have the administrative details, the targeted competency, reflective report on the features of oral literature from a variety of oral literature journals. Happenings, engaging in analysis of oral literature genres, and presenting findings through discussion and class activities. So learners' feelings, this is what they put from their own point of view. Today, I felt confident and interested as I explored different genres of oral literature. However, I found it slightly challenging to clearly explain some features during group discussions. And this can be done in all learning areas. And they can write even where they got lost. That the teacher explained step 1, 2, 3, as we were doing this in mathematics, and I got lost at step 4. They can write that. So this can happen in all learning areas. Then the teacher's comment to the learner: you have shown good understanding of the features of oral literature. Continue improving your explanation and presentation skills to communicate your ideas more clearly. This is what I call forecast. The teacher should give a forecast, kind of a feedback, so that the learner knows how to move from the point at which he or she is. Then there will be the recommendation that he should be given more opportunities to practice analyzing and presenting oral literature. And this will help him build confidence and improve his communication skill. And that is all I had this evening. Let's go and try to use the assessment journal and the anecdotal record in our classes. Thank you so much.
We sincerely thank you, Joseph and Dirango. I would venture to suggest that the anecdotal and assessment journal tools are likely some among the least familiar, particularly as we're coming out of the 844. So it's very helpful to hear of these new ideas for assessment. Thank you. We're going to move directly into Patrick Talam, speaking about checklist and oral test. He's our biology author and teacher. Thank you and welcome, Patrick. Patrick, we don't see you or hear you. So please come out, unmute, and give us the presentation. Checklist and oral test. Thank you. There we go. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Patrick Talam, an author in biology and also a CBE consultant. Now, with the checklist, this one is a tool used to assess tasks that requires a learner to exhibit a set of specified characteristics. Now, these characteristics are obtained from the curriculum designer. It can also be used to rate the tasks that require a learner to follow certain instructions or procedures or steps. This tool is appropriate in practical tasks, like because I'm a teacher and author of biology. I can use an example maybe in biology where learners are preparing temporary slides or collecting specimens, or maybe even in cases of food safety in biology. Move on to the next slide. Good, this is a sample. Now, this sample contains administrative details, that is the school, learning area, teacher details like the name and the PhD number. Then it captures the strand, for this case, cell biology and biodiversity. And then we have a substrand. Please slideshow, our presenter, please slideshow. Okay, as we are doing that, the checklist should contain administrative details, the strand, the substrand, and the task that you are assessing the learners in. So you must clearly specify the task. So this case, in the cell biology and biodiversity, under the subsequent cell structures and specialization, you can have a task like demonstrating how specialized plant cells relate their structures to their function. Just move on to the next slide. Thank you. This is how it is. You must clearly specify a task. Now, under the task that you have given, you have said that this tool is used to assess specific characteristics. So for this, we are looking at the characteristic that a learner is able to identify specialized cells correctly. So you have two options there, whether a learner is able to identify or not. If a learner is able to identify, then you pick in that checklist. Another aspect is use correct examples of
Francis,
plant.
kindly mute. Francis, kindly mute.
Yeah, the admin can mute him or her. Francis. Okay, thank you, Francis. So we are saying that this tool is used to assess a learner if he or she is able to identify a specialized cell, yes or no. So there are two possibilities here. Either this learner is able to to identify or not. Then another aspect is a learner is able to use correct examples of plant and animal cells. Again, yes or no. Then relate structures to functions. And because this is a tool used by the teacher, in your class, perhaps you have 40 learners. So you are going to capture all those learners in each in their names, in their own names. For example, in this case, we have Ruth is able to identify. That is why there's a tick under the yes column. Then we have uses correct examples. That one can do very well. But when it comes to relating the structures to functions, this particular learner, Ruth, is unable. And you can actually see that there are comments that have been given by the teacher against each learner. Now, this tool is so important because you are able to assess individual learners, their abilities, whether they are able to do a particular task or maybe to exhibit a certain characteristic or not. So you're able to give the comments for all the learners. Yeah. So just move on to the next slide. Now, once you have this tool, then you give feedback, and the feedback is derived from the checklist. For example, we have the general feedback. This one gives all the overall summary of the learner's understanding, the effort, and the level of achievement. To what extent has this learner achieved this specific outcome? Then we have positive feedback or strengths. Now, this one is used to show what the learner did well and highlights areas of success. Remember, the principle of CBE is not to assess subjectively. A learner may not be able to do a certain task, but can do another task very well. This is now where, as a facilitator, you capture. Then the areas for improvement, identify specific areas where the learner needs to improve. Like in the case of Ruth, this learner, as much as she was able to identify the cell, she was also not able to exhibit a certain characteristic. So at this point, a facilitator gives the areas that needs to be improved. And finally, we have individualized feedback examples. For example, at this point, you provide performance levels to guide the facilitator in giving appropriate learner-specific comments. Just move on. Then you give a report, that is by giving the general feedback, the level of achievement, the comments or the remarks, and the action points. So I'll not go into those details, but as a facilitator, you should give the general feedback to give a summary of the learner, to indicate the learner's performance, and the comment or the remarks. This is very, very brief. Yeah, the remarks should be very brief and specific and precise to the individual learner's progress. Just move on to the next slide. Which is the next tool, oral test. Oral tests are used by a facilitator to ask questions verbally. So the word oral here means verbal, and the learner responds with an appropriate mode of communication. For example, if as a facilitator in biology, I'm teaching or facilitating learning in biology, then I can ask the student what is meant by the term cell specialization, and the students respond. So at that point, I'm able now to assess whether this learner has understood, maybe from the activities that we've done, and from our book, we call it Did You Discover? After giving them the activity, you give them some general information so that if this learner did not, from the activity, acquire certain knowledge, then the did you discover section gives that. So oral test is only used to ask a simple, precise question. So don't give them a question that it is oral, yes, but it will give a lot of detailed responses. So to that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick. Very concise, very clear, very helpful. We appreciate that. So we have our last presenter, Alice Gatoto. She's going to talk about rating scale and learner profile from the chemistry area. Welcome, Alice. Just make sure you're not mute. We're not hearing you currently. Is Alice on the call with us, please? Okay, I'm not getting a response. Yes.
Can you proceed?
Sorry?
Salam, kindly proceed. Kindly. Just a moment. Joseph.
You could cover this. I think we're requesting Joseph Durango to cover the rating scale and the learner profile, please.
Yeah. Is he in? Emmanuel Wawire, kindly cover the remaining 2 slides. Dan Vedastas is covering the remaining 2.
Yeah, please proceed. Please proceed.
Yes, our next assessment tool is a rating scale. A rating scale is used by teachers to measure the level to which a learner demonstrates a particular skill, competency, behavior, or performance. From the word rating, here the teacher assesses the learner as he or she performs a task using some defined performance levels rather than using marks or percentages. So here we don't rate using marks or some percentages. And then the key features of a rating scale, as I have said, we use performance levels. We measure the quality of learner performance and not the quantity. We provide systematic and objective evaluation. And then we help in continuous, it also helps in continuous assessment. When you are using a rating scale, you are not measuring the quantity of the learner performance by saying it's scored 70, 80, 90, or whatever. The rating scale does not do that. A rating scale only shows the quality. If it is satisfactory, or it's not satisfactory, or it is very satisfactory. As we can see from the next slide, which is on the components of a rating scale. For example, I'm a chemistry teacher. These are the administrative details of a rating scale. As we have learned, these assessment tools and methods, the tools have got administrative details which are almost common for all of them. So there is school, teacher's name, grade, learner's name. A rating scale also has a learner's name. There is a learning area, strand, substrand, the date you are assessing, and then the outcome which you are assessing. It means what you are rating for the learner in that outcome. I have used a sample of chemistry in organic chemistry. There is a substrand in grade 10 called chemical bonding, and the outcome is illustrating metallic bond. So these learners are illustrating metallic bond. Illustrate means like they are drawing. So when they are drawing a metallic bond, I'm going to rate the drawings or the illustrations of each learner. When we go to the next slide showing the particulars of this rating scale, it has indicators of the skills or concepts to be assessed. Like there is ability to identify and explain formation of a metallic bond, and there is another indicator of ability to draw a clear and labeled structure of a metallic bond. So in my lesson, I can inquire of learners to identify a metallic bond from some given structures I can give them, and then they can explain the formation of a metallic bond. For them to illustrate and draw well a clear labeled diagram, they should be able to know the formation, how is it formed. From there, they will be able to draw. So therefore, the first indicator is ability to identify or ability to explain formation of a metallic bond. And then the second indicator is the ability to draw a clear, well-labeled diagram. Then the part which helps me to rate them, it is having the characteristic which I'm measuring the learners against the indicators. For example, very satisfactorily, it means the learner the learner has explained very well the formation of a metallic bond. And then if the diagram is very okay, well labeled, with no any mislabeling or unclarity, then the diagram will be very satisfactory. Then satisfactory and then unsatisfactory. So here, as we can see, there is no quantity measurement. It's just a rating scale. Then there is teacher's comment. You comment depending on what you have marked. For example, here Lucas demonstrates a good understanding of metallic bond. Diagram is clear. Some labels may need refinement because there is somewhere it is satisfactory. Then you can sign there, and even the learner also signs. Because of time, for a learner's profile, it is a comprehensive record of what a learner's progress is, showing competencies, talents, interests, values, and achievements over a period of time. So this one is not on a lesson. It's not an outcome. Over a period of time, maybe a whole substrand or strand. It provides a picture of a learner's development, not academic performance. Information you use in a learner's profile, you obtain it from other assessment tools like journals, schedules, portfolios, checklists, and even how learners behave in conducting other projects or activities. So you collect information, then you sum it up. For example, there is administrative details here. The substrand is experiments. So if it is chemical bonding, about conducting experiments. Then here you indicate the learner's strengths, weaknesses, learner's preferences, or interests. Then you have the criteria of which you have been assessing the learner throughout the whole period of time. You indicate the learner's strengths per each criteria, learner's weakness per each criteria, and then learner's interest or preferences per each. So I'd like to hand over to Diane, who will invite Jody. Then we conclude.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. We are racing against time, but we appreciate that input. I think just to remind ourselves that we've heard over and over again, let's use a variety. Let's use a variety of assessment methods, a variety of assessment tools. Sure, there could be some more suited for our situation or our learning area, but we need to really stretch and learn to use a variety of those tools. And remembering again, formative assessment, it's part of the learning process. It's not to prove what a learner has accomplished or to evidence mastery, but to a pathway to mastery, helping our learners reach those learning goals, reach competence in the learning outcomes, in the competencies, and even the values, which we didn't address very much, but they're all part of the learning process. So thank you so much. We're going to hand over now to our very able marketing manager, Jeffrey Lichode. Please give us what you have, and then we'll be wrapping up very soon. Lichode, over to you.
Thank you, Diane, and all the presenters for this afternoon and evening. We appreciate the teachers who have stayed all this long to listen, to learn and relearn. And indeed, I believe from when we started, we are learning something and we are getting better when it comes to delivery of this curriculum. And also now the most important aspect on assessment that is very different from how we've been administering assessment with the 844. I'll request maybe Ada to allow me to share my screen here. I have one item to share with the teachers. If you can stop the screen sharing on your side. Yes, thank you. So colleagues, my name is Geoffrey Lijodi. I'm the National Sales and Marketing Manager here at Moran Publishers, and I'm a teacher by profession. So I enjoy doing this job. I enjoy talking to teachers. I enjoy talking to my colleagues. And I believe through that, I get an opportunity also to learn and also unlearn. So from my side, I was also taking notes from our able facilitators because I'm not an active classroom teacher. So when I get such opportunities, also I take notes, and I've learned that as we conduct our assessments, we need to understand the learning outcomes, and also as teachers, we are supposed to be very keen and clearly interpret the designs, clearly understand the strands and the substrands so that we are able to deliver the lessons effectively. The specific learning outcomes, we are supposed to know them. And then we have been reminded that the assessment must be based on what learners are expected to demonstrate and not just content coverage. That is very important with this curriculum. And we have also been empowered on preparing assessment tools. We've been taken through all the assessment tools that are needed. We've also been reminded that we need to ensure there's inclusivity and differentiation when we are administering this assessment, because we have learners with different capabilities, and we need to provide an accommodation where necessary for these learners with different abilities. And when you look at our textbooks, we have incorporated a lot of what we've been taught and what our facilitators have shared with us. And we know you've received 2 textbooks from government. You've received our English, and I can assure you in grade 11, you'll receive 4 textbooks from us. But then as teachers and as we transit with this curriculum, it's important to get another 1 or 2 textbooks with us, so that we can be able to find that is serving our needs, because our learners are different. So I want to tell you that our textbooks have been well structured, approved, and well illustrated with content that will give you an upper hand. When you are preparing your lesson plans, if you get an opportunity to buy one of our textbooks that was not supplied with government, you'll find that they are very effective. And our textbooks will allow you to have some sequence in content, to have it logically. You'll find that you'll be able to identify concepts and competencies easily, and also you'll be able to prepare examples and activities and questions. You'll be able to find them easily in our textbooks. And also the different teaching methods. We've talked about activities, discussions, practical tasks, and all this has been incorporated in our textbooks. And I want to encourage you to get at least copies of our books that were not supplied with government. And most important again, in our textbooks, we are giving different examples, varied examples, and this is to incorporate learners with differentiated learning, to incorporate learners who are time takers, who are average, who are fast. So within our textbooks, you'll find that our examples and the solutions we are offering to these examples will enable learners with different capabilities to cope with your subjects and your lessons. And then most important again, in assessment, as I mentioned before the lesson, if you look at our textbooks as a teacher, you'll be able to identify what you can assess. You can develop questions aligned to the learning outcomes. You can prepare for formative assessment tasks, as Diane has mentioned, that is a continuous thing. And then also you'll find that in our textbooks, the learners will use them easily and will be able to review their progress as they use these textbooks of ours. We have incorporated also a QR code behind our books. You'll find a QR code here that you'll scan that has all the media links that you need in all the subjects. So I thought that was very important to mention to us, so that as we prepare for this curriculum and how we can effectively continue teaching effectively, it is important that you also get copies of our books, even for the grade, the Form 3s and Form 4s. We still have quite a number of books for assessment, that is for revision, that you can use in preparing them, like the mathematical terms and formula. We still have our passwords, a few in stock. We still have the breakthrough workbooks, but most important, we have our grade 10 books that are already out there in the market. And I just wanted to share this with us so that at least you can have a clue of what Moran Publishers has published beyond what you received from government, that is the grade 10 skills in English. So for teachers who have not had an opportunity to attend our subject webinars, we are here and we are saying that Kiswahili Chanana is our course book for Kiswahili. The skills and English is there. You have it in your schools. We also have our community service learning, Moran community service learning. Physical education is almost out. For teachers of arts and sports science, we have our music and dance that is available in the bookshops across the country. For those in social sciences pathway, we have our business studies, Moran business studies, Moran history and citizenship, Moran geography, that is available in the bookshops out there. And for language and literature, our oral literature text is already with you from government. And for those in Kiswahili, I mentioned about the course book, Swahili Chanana. We have Tamthilia Wema Nawawi is available and ready. You can encourage your learners to purchase this when they close in a week's time. For science and technology, that is STEM, we have the pure sciences, biology, chemistry, physics, and core mathematics that are available in the bookshops out there, and Moran agriculture. Last but not least, for the technical and engineering, our building and construction is printing, but our Moran metalwork, Moran electricity, Moran power and mechanics, these ones are available in the bookshops. Please make a point of looking out for these textbooks and encourage your learners to buy more of these textbooks so that as we progress, we are able to have an opportunity to interact with more materials. From me is to thank you all for your support. We continue coming to your schools and engage with you. And I want to return this back to our moderator. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. I think that one thing we can all agree in this session is that our authors are very well informed, very well versed about assessment tools. And remember that these are the Moran authors, the very authors who have written the books that Jeffrey has told us about. So that knowledge that it was so abundant until we went over time. We are very sorry for going over time, but that knowledge is contained in these books, these Moran books. So we encourage you to get a hold of them, even as we've had. And in every substrand, an assessment method is suggested, an assessment tool is suggested. You can see that it's suggested out of a wealth of knowledge that the authors hold, and that will be very helpful to you, very helpful to us in the classroom as we're teaching. So yes, assessment along the way. We were asked, is it at the beginning? Is it during the class? During the lesson? Is it at the end? It's ongoing. It's all through. And in order to allow the learners to really master the content and have success when they reach those summative assessments at the end of the terms or whatever units we're holding. So thank you again very, very much for being with us. We trust that you have been enriched in some way, and I will just ask Marubi to give us the final closing remarks. Thank you very much. Mr. Marubi, it's over to you. Vedastas.
Yes. Thank you, dear teachers, for joining us in this webinar of learning assessment methods and tools when they are being used to assess learners in CBE. I request that if you have any question, you may put it in the comment section, and then we are sharing our contacts for any clarification. Lijodi, please write your number for any communication or follow-up by our dear teachers. After that, we will have a prayer to close. Mr. Lijodi, yes. We can see it is 0733 33 32 80. Geoffrey Lijodi. 0733 33 280. National Sales Manager. And mine is 0710 752 007. My science editor. Yeah. Here to Moran. There being no any other communication, I request that we pray, then we close. I'm praying. Thank you, dear Father in heaven, for your care and love upon us and the grace that you enabled us to reach here with our teachers, for the insights and briefing. Enable us to do the best, dear Lord, to the children you have bestowed on our hands, to be good stewards and guide them well and nurture them well too, dear Lord. Guide us throughout the day and even onwards. May your grace be abundant on us until the end. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, we are free to leave. We are free to leave. We are free to leave. You are welcome for any clarification or inquiry. Have a blessed evening.